I thought my sister was calling to congratulate me on the biggest contract of my career. Instead, she was warning me that our parents were about to destroy everything I'd built. Sarah, her voice cracked through the phone, they're not who you think they are. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'd love it if you could share in the comments which city or country you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let's begin our story together. My woodworking shop smelled like sawdust and dreams. Every morning at 5:30, I'd unlock that heavy oak door and breathe in the scent that had become my sanctuary. Pine shavings curled at my feet like golden ribbons. The gentle hum of my table saw was my morning meditation. This wasn't just a business, it was my heartbeat made tangible. I was 31 when everything fell apart. 10 years of building craftsman's legacy from nothing, from a borrowed garage and my grandfather's hand-me-down tools. 10 years of splinters under my fingernails and aching muscles that felt like victory. 10 years of proving to mom and dad that their investment in their impractical daughter wasn't a mistake. See, my parents owned Thompson Construction, a mid-sized operation that built half the developments in our county. Success came easy to them, or so it seemed. Dad would walk job sites in his pressed khakis and clean work boots, pointing at blueprints while other people got their hands dirty. Mom handled the books, her manicured nails clicking across calculator keys like she was playing piano. They'd given me $50,000 when I started Craftsman's Legacy. To help our little artist, Mom had said, ruffling my hair like I was still 12. $50,000 that felt like a fortune then, though it barely covered my first year's rent and equipment. But it came with strings, invisible ones that I wouldn't see until they were wrapped around my throat. Keep it in the family, sweetheart, Dad had insisted when I wanted to incorporate. We're all in this together. So I made Thompson Construction a silent partner. 20% ownership for their investment. It seemed fair. It seemed loving. It was the first mistake in a long line of mistakes I didn't know I was making. Lisa, my younger sister, was everything I wasn't. Where I had calloused hands, she had soft skin that never saw a day of real work. Where I wore paint-stained jeans, she wore designer suits to her marketing job downtown. She was Dad's little princess, Mom's perfect daughter, the one who never disappointed anyone. But that morning in October, when the leaves were turning the same amber as my favorite wood stain, Lisa's voice on the phone didn't sound perfect. It sounded terrified. "Sarah, you need to listen to me," she whispered, like someone might overhear. "I was at Mom and Dad's house last night for dinner. They thought I'd gone home, but I came back for my purse." She paused, and I heard her breathing, quick and shallow. They were on the phone with their lawyer. Not Harrison, the family guy. Someone else. Someone from the city. My hands tightened around my coffee mug. The ceramic was warm, comforting, but something cold was spreading through my chest. They were talking about Craftsman's Legacy. About you. Sarah. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. They called you ungrateful. Said you'd gotten too big for your britches, that it was time to remind you who was really in charge. The words hit me like a mallet to the chest. Ungrateful? I worked 16-hour days. I'd built something beautiful, something meaningful, something that employed 12 people and had orders backed up for 6 months. The dining table I'd crafted for the Hendersons would become a family heirloom. The custom cabinets for the new medical center would outlast all of us. Ungrateful. There's more, Lisa continued, and now she was crying. They said they were going to call an emergency board meeting. Force you out. Take control of everything you've built. She sobbed. They said you'd thank them someday for saving you from yourself. The coffee mug slipped from my numb fingers, ceramic shattering across my workshop floor like my world was shattering in my chest. Brown liquid spread between the pieces, staining the pale sawdust dark. I hung up without saying goodbye. Stood there in my sanctuary, surrounded by half-finished projects and the tools that knew my hands better than any lover ever had, and felt the ground dissolving beneath my feet. The smell of sawdust that usually comforted me now felt suffocating. The gentle morning light streaming through my windows looked harsh, exposing everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I'd built, was built on sand. That night, I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Couldn't even hold a chisel steady enough to work. I kept thinking about the family dinners where they'd bragged about our family business empire. About the pride in Dad's voice when he'd introduce me as the artist in the family. About Mom's Facebook posts showing off photos of my work to her friends. All performance. All manipulation. All lies wrapped in the pretty paper of parental love. By dawn, I'd made my decision. If they wanted to treat this like business instead of family, then I'd show them what business really looked like. The law office of Patricia Wells looked nothing like the warm, wood-paneled space where our family lawyer worked. This was steel and glass, sharp edges and sharper minds. Patricia herself was a woman who looked like she could cut through legal documents with her gaze alone. "Miss Thompson," she said, reviewing the partnership agreement I'd brought. "This is interesting." Her perfectly manicured finger traced the signature lines. "Your parents' investment of $50,000 in exchange for 20% ownership. But tell me, what was the company valued at when they made this investment?" "Nothing," I admitted. "It was just me, some borrowed tools, and a dream." "And now?" I swallowed hard. "We're valued at just over $2 million. Our net worth is approximately $1.8 million after debts." Patricia's smile was sharp as a saw blade. "So their initial investment of $50,000 has grown to represent ownership of a $1.8 million company. That's quite a return." She leaned back in her leather chair. "But here's what's interesting about your partnership agreement. Did you read Section 12? I shook my head. 10 years ago, I'd trusted them. I'd signed where they pointed, smiled when they smiled, believed every word about family and love and looking out for each other. Section 12 states that in the event of a hostile takeover attempt by existing partners, the founding member has the right to buy out all other partnerships at their original investment value, plus standard market interest." Patricia's smile widened. "It's a founder protection clause. Fairly standard, though most people don't think to look for it." My heart started beating again for the first time in 24 hours. "What does that mean?" "It means, Ms. Thompson, that if your parents attempt to force you out or take controlling interest of your company, you have the legal right to buy them out for approximately $68,000. Not the $400,000 their 20% is actually worth." The breath I'd been holding escaped in a rush. Suddenly, the steel and glass office felt warm, welcoming, like coming home. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon in the conference room at Thompson Construction. I'd been in that room 100 times, eating birthday cake at company parties, listening to Dad give speeches about family values and working together. Now it felt like walking into an ambush. Mom and Dad sat at the head of the polished conference table, their lawyer, a thin, nervous man named Peterson, beside them with a briefcase full of papers. They'd dressed for the occasion. Dad in his best suit, the one he wore to weddings and funerals. Mom in pearls and a navy dress that said, "I'm successful and you're not." "Sarah, darling," Mom began, her voice honey-sweet and venom-sharp. "We're so glad you could make it. We have some exciting news about the future of Craftsman's legacy." I sat down across from them, my own briefcase beside my chair. Inside were Patricia's carefully prepared documents. My hands were steady, my voice calm. The panic from yesterday had crystallized into something harder, cleaner. Determination. "We've been watching your little business," Dad said, leaning back in his chair like a king on his throne. "And frankly, sweetheart, we're concerned. You're taking too many risks, spending too much on fancy wood when cheaper alternatives would work just fine. It's time for some adult supervision." Peterson cleared his throat and pulled out a stack of papers. "What your parents are proposing is a restructuring of Craftsman's legacy's leadership. As majority stakeholders, 20%, I interrupted quietly. Excuse me? 20%. That's what they own. 20% isn't majority anything. Dad's face darkened. Don't you dare take that tone with us, young lady. We invested in you when no one else would. We gave you everything. You gave me $50,000. My voice stayed level, professional. 10 years ago. In exchange for 20% of a company that didn't exist yet. This is exactly what we're talking about, Mom said, her honey voice turning bitter. This ungrateful attitude. This selfish thinking. Everything you have because of us. Our money. Our connections. Our family name. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out Patricia's documents. Slid them across the polished table toward Peterson, who was looking less confident by the second. There's just one small problem with your restructuring plan, I said. According to Section 12 of our original partnership agreement, the one you both signed 10 years ago, any attempt at a hostile takeover triggers my right to buy out all other partners at their original investment value. The silence in that room was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Peterson's face went white as he scanned the documents. His hands actually shook as he turned pages, looking for some loophole, some escape clause that didn't exist. This is... he stammered. This is highly irregular. No, I said calmly. This is standard founder protection. What's irregular is family members attempting a hostile takeover of their daughter's business. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making the water glasses jump. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you. After everything we've given you. You've given me $50,000 and 10 years of emotional manipulation, I replied. And now you're trying to steal a $2 million company because you think I'm too stupid to notice. Mom's perfect composure cracked like ice in spring. How dare you? This is a family business. Everything belongs to the family. No, I stood up, gathering my papers. This is my business. Built with my hands, my vision, my 16-hour days. You're investors. Nothing more. I looked directly at Peterson. You have 72 hours to respond to our buyout offer. $68,000 for their 20% stake. Dad was purple with rage. You can't do this to us. We're your parents. Your business partners who just attempted a hostile takeover, I corrected. And you're about to be former business partners. The door felt heavier than usual as I walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom sobbing, Dad shouting, Peterson frantically flipping through legal documents looking for a miracle that wasn't there. But outside in the parking lot, breathing free air for the first time in 48 hours, I felt lighter than I had in years. The October sky was brilliant blue, the kind of blue that made everything else look sharper, cleaner, more real. I thought about calling Lisa to thank her. To tell her she'd saved my life, my business, my future. But first, I had phone calls to make. Employees to reassure. Customers to contact. A business to protect. My business. My choices. My future. The legal aftermath was swift and brutal. Dad hired 3 different lawyers trying to find a way out of the founder protection clause. Mom called everyone in our extended family, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who'd betrayed the people who loved her most. But Patricia's work was flawless. The contract was ironclad. Section 12 existed, they had signed it, and their attempted takeover triggered it automatically. Within 2 weeks, I owned 100% of Craftsman's legacy. Within a month, I'd moved the shop to a larger space, hired 3 more craftspeople, and landed the biggest contract in my company's history, custom millwork for the new city hall. The family relationships were a different story. Mom and Dad cut off all contact. Blocked my number, returned my letters unopened, told anyone who'd listen that their eldest daughter had stolen their retirement fund. Lisa stayed neutral at first, caught between loyalty to our parents and the truth she'd witnessed. But eventually, she chose truth. She chose me. I see who they really are now, she told me over coffee 6 months later. I see how they manipulated you, how they tried to control you. How they never saw you as their daughter, just as an asset they owned. We were sitting in my new office above the expanded workshop. Through the windows, I could watch my team working on a gorgeous walnut dining set, their hands sure and skilled, creating something that would last generations. I'm proud of you, Lisa said quietly. For standing up to them. For choosing yourself. It wasn't easy, building a relationship with my sister outside our parents' shadow. We'd both been shaped by their expectations, their manipulations, their careful orchestration of family dynamics. But slowly, carefully, we learned to love each other without their interference. My business thrived. Without the constant criticism, the second-guessing, the subtle sabotage I now realized had been happening for years, Craftsman's legacy grew beyond anything I'd dared imagine. We moved into furniture restoration, architectural salvage, custom pieces for museums and historical societies. But the real growth was inside me. For 31 years, I'd been the dutiful daughter, constantly seeking approval from people who saw me as a resource to be managed rather than a person to be loved. Learning to trust my own judgment, to value my own worth, to set boundaries with people who'd taught me I had no right to boundaries, that was harder than any business challenge I'd ever faced. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles or the financial restructuring. It was grieving the parents I'd thought I had. The loving, supportive parents who existed only in my imagination, built from my desperate need to believe they cared about my happiness more than their control. Those parents had never existed. But letting go of the fantasy of them, that nearly broke me. I found a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family trauma. You're mourning a relationship that was never real, she explained during one of our sessions. That's why it feels so devastating. You're not just losing your parents, you're losing the illusion of parents who actually put your well-being first. It took months to untangle the web of emotional manipulation I'd lived with my entire life. The subtle put-downs disguised as concern. The conditional love that evaporated the moment I stopped being useful. The way they'd isolated me from other relationships by making me feel like family was all I could count on. All lies. All control mechanisms. All designed to keep me dependent and grateful for scraps of affection. But here's the thing about sawdust, it settles. Eventually, the chaos clears, and you can see what you're really working with. 2 years after that terrible October morning, I received an unexpected visitor. Mom showed up at my workshop on a Tuesday afternoon, looking older, smaller somehow. Her perfect composure was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "Sarah," she said, standing awkwardly by my workbench where I was hand-sanding a cherry wood jewelry box. I wanted to talk. My hands stilled on the sandpaper. For a moment, I was 8 years old again, desperate for her approval, ready to forgive anything for a crumb of maternal love. But only for a moment. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, not stopping my work. "Your father." She began, then stopped. Started again. "We made mistakes. Maybe we handled things wrong." I looked up at her then. Really looked. The woman who'd seemed so powerful, so in control of everything and everyone around her, looked fragile now. Uncertain. "You tried to steal my business," I said quietly. "You called me ungrateful for building something beautiful with my own hands. You tried to convince the whole family that I was selfish for not letting you take credit for my work." Her lips trembled. We thought we were protecting you. Guiding you. You thought you owned me." The silence stretched between us like a canyon. She shifted uncomfortably, her gaze darting around my workshop, taking in the expanded space, the new equipment, the obvious signs of success. "You've done well for yourself," she said finally. "Yes," I agreed. "I have. She waited for more, an invitation, forgiveness, some sign that I was ready to rebuild what they'd tried to destroy. But I just kept sanding, the gentle rasp of paper against wood filling the space between us. Finally, she turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "We do love you, Sarah. Despite everything, we do love you." I set down my sandpaper and looked at her one last time. "No," I said gently. "You love the idea of controlling me. You love having something to brag about to your friends. You love the fantasy of a perfect family where everyone does what you want them to do." I picked up the sandpaper again. "But you've never loved me enough to let me be myself." She left without another word. I never saw her again. 3 years later, I got a call from Lisa. Dad had had a heart attack. He was in the hospital, asking for me. I didn't go. Some people would call that cruel. Some would say family is family, that forgiveness is divine, that holding grudges only hurts yourself. But I'd learned something important in those 3 years of therapy and self-discovery. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. You can release your anger without returning to abuse. You can wish someone well from a safe distance. I wished Dad well. I hoped he recovered fully, lived many more years, found some peace in his final decades. But I wasn't going to provide that peace at the cost of my own. The business continued to grow. We expanded into teaching workshops, sharing the ancient craft of fine woodworking with a new generation. I hired my first apprentice, a young woman named Casey who reminded me of myself at 21, hungry, determined, desperate to prove herself. But I made sure she knew, from day one, that her worth wasn't tied to my approval. That her success was her own, not mine to take credit for. That the craft she was learning belonged to her, not to me. "Why are you teaching me this?" she asked one day, watching me demonstrate a particularly complex joinery technique. "Because knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied," I told her. "Because you have talented hands and a good eye. Because the craft needs people like you to keep it alive." She looked puzzled. "But won't I eventually be competition?" I laughed, the sound echoing through the workshop like wind chimes. "Casey, there's enough beauty to be made in this world for all of us. Your success doesn't diminish mine. Your growth doesn't threaten me." I handed her the chisel. "Now try it yourself." That's the difference between love and control. Love wants the other person to flourish, even if that means they outgrow you. Control wants to keep them small, dependent, grateful for scraps. It took me 31 years to learn that difference. I hope Casey learns it sooner. 5 years after that October morning when my world shattered and rebuilt itself, I received an invitation that made me laugh out loud. The Chamber of Commerce wanted to give me their Family Business of the Year award. The irony was delicious. Craftsman's legacy had indeed become a family business, just not the kind my parents had envisioned. My chosen family. Lisa, who now handled our marketing with brilliant creativity. Casey, who'd become not just my apprentice but my partner, bringing fresh ideas and boundless energy. Maria, my finishing specialist, whose grandmother had taught her traditional techniques that elevated every piece we created. We were a family bound not by blood or obligation, but by shared passion, mutual respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. The night of the awards ceremony, I stood at the podium looking out at a room full of business owners and community leaders. Some I recognized from my parents' social circle, people who'd probably heard their version of our story, who'd been told I was the ungrateful daughter who'd betrayed family loyalty for personal gain. Family business, I began, my voice clear and strong, isn't about biology. It's about building something together with people who share your values, who support your growth, who celebrate your successes without needing to take credit for them. I talked about the importance of boundaries, of choosing your own definition of success, of surrounding yourself with people who see your potential rather than your usefulness to them. In the audience, I spotted Lisa beaming with pride. Casey, elegant in her first formal dress, taking notes on her phone, probably planning social media posts. Maria, tears streaming down her face, giving me a thumbs up. My real family. My chosen family. My business family. After the ceremony, a young man approached me. He looked nervous, uncertain, like he was carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders. "Miss Thompson," he said quietly. "I wanted to thank you for what you said tonight. About family, about boundaries. I'm dealing with something similar with my parents and my restaurant. They think because they loaned me money, they own my dreams." I handed him Patricia Wells' business card. "Good lawyers are worth their weight in gold," I told him. "And remember, you don't owe anyone your dreams. Not even family. Especially not family who'd rather own you than love you." He clutched the card like a lifeline. "Thank you." As I watched him walk away, I thought about that terrified 31-year-old woman who'd stood in her sawdust-covered workshop 5 years ago, watching her world collapse and not knowing if she had the strength to rebuild it. She'd been stronger than she knew. They all are. The scent of fresh sawdust still fills my workshop every morning. The gentle hum of the table saw still serves as my meditation. But now, mixed with those familiar sounds, I hear laughter. Casey joking with our newest apprentice. Maria humming while she applies the final coat of finish to a rocking chair destined for someone's nursery. Lisa on the phone with a client, her enthusiasm infectious. This is what family business should sound like. Joy. Collaboration. Mutual support. Not manipulation disguised as love. Not control wrapped in concern. Not the slow suffocation of someone else's dreams for your life. I built Craftsman's legacy with my own hands, from sawdust and stubbornness and the refusal to let anyone else define my worth. But what I'm most proud of isn't the business itself, it's the boundaries I learned to set, the family I chose to build, the courage I found to disappoint people who were never really proud of me anyway. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who claim to love you but treat you like property. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is be loyal to yourself first. Sometimes the most grateful thing you can do is refuse to be grateful for scraps when you deserve a feast. The dining table I finished last week will seat 12 people comfortably. It's made from reclaimed barn wood, each board carrying the history of the family who worked that land for 3 generations. When I delivered it to the customers, a young couple expecting their first child, the woman ran her hands over the smooth surface and started crying. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Our children will do homework at this table. Our grandchildren will play board games here. This table will see birthday parties and holiday dinners and quiet Tuesday night conversations that change everything." That's legacy. Not control that passes from one generation to the next like a virus. Not ownership that treats love like a transaction. But beauty that outlasts us, craftsmanship that honors both the maker and the user, creation that adds more to the world than it takes. That's the family business I was always meant to build. Have you ever had to choose between the family you were born into and the family you needed? What did you learn about yourself in that choosing? Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more stories of people who found the strength to build the lives they deserved.